I grew up poor in rural South Louisiana. There were Black people in my town, but there were very few Black people in my school. However, I learned the word nigger in school. I didn't really hear it much at home unless my dad referred to Brazil nuts as nigger toes. He did not see anything wrong with that name, but I did, and it made me feel sad, and I winced every time I heard it. I knew that I was not supposed to say that to Black people, and I knew that they could say that to each other. And so I was very, very glad when I learned that the real name for those nuts was Brazil nuts. I didn't really have anything to do, or I didn't go to school with Black children, until I went to high school. And once I met them, I was fascinated. They were so not like me, and I thought that was good. I wanted to ask them all the questions, not to make fun of them or anything, but because I found their ways so perplexing, I wanted to know everything. I saw our differences, but I didn't realize why they mattered so much. Even after I knew about slavery and civil rights and all that history, I just saw us as people who were divided between who was kind and who was mean. Our churches in my town, we had Black churches and we had white churches, all 5 minutes from each other, but no mixed churches. And we would only meet with the Black church from our denomination every 5th Sunday for a singing. And that was it. I thought that was weird. I was like, why didn't we just get together and make a difference in our town together? But I was a kid who was taught not to question authority. I'm certainly making up for lost time. My grandparents, my father's parents, were overtly racist. And it was chalked up to, well, they didn't know what they were doing. They didn't understand it, and you can't really blame them. And I'm like, oh, yeah, you can. Yeah, you can. We would take this, one of my dad's white friends had a biracial son, and we would take him to church with us. And he was the sweetest kid in the world, and he had these gorgeous golden eyes. I still remember them, and I haven't seen this kid in like 30 years. And he was so different from everyone else we'd ever take to church, because we took other people to church. And I never understood why we didn't have anyone else like him to bring to church with us. I wanted more. I have always wanted more. Now, I grew up in a society that taught me that having a relationship other than friendship with a Black person, with Black people, was wrong, was not okay. And I also learned through my society that Black men should be feared. Even though no Black men had ever done anything to me to make me fear them, that was just understood. And this really hurt me in college when I met a really great guy named Gerald. He was Kenyan, and he was in my ethical Christian living class. And he flirted with me, and I was charmed, and I loved it. He was so great. And we went out a couple of times. He cooked for me. He treated me like a princess. But I could not bring myself to hold his hand or kiss him. And why? Because sometime long ago, someone told me as a kid that was not allowed. What is that? What is that? I know, it is. So I just couldn't even hold it inside anymore. I was so tortured. And so I called my parents and I told them about him. And they said, well, your grandmother would have a shit and hemorrhage if she knew that you were even contemplating dating a Black man. She would disown you. She would disown you. And my parents didn't think that there was anything wrong with Gerald or my relationship, but they said my grandmother would have a problem with it, and my grandfather would have a problem with it, and so I was close to them, and that was basically them telling me no anyway. I fought within myself for quite a while to get rid of that feeling that it was wrong to have a relationship with Gerald. But in the end, and I even asked my white friend who was dating a black man at the time, and she was engaged to him, I was like, did you have, these weird feelings and wonder about it and all that when you were getting together with your fiance? And she said, well, if you're struggling, he's not the man for you, and you should be honest with him. So I was. He was leaving for a trip, and we were standing outside of his car, and I was at his trunk, and I was helping him load for his trip, and I couldn't hold it back any longer. I couldn't. I had to be honest with him, and so I looked at him and I said, you are black, and I grew up in a community that told me that it was wrong to date black men. And I tried to get rid of that feeling, and I couldn't. And I'm ashamed. I felt horrible, disgusting. I hated myself for having to say that to him. I saw him about a month later at a church service, and it's about as big as this room, and I saw him from far away. He turned and saw me, turned around, and walked back out. He probably still hates me to this day, and honestly, I don't blame him. I'm a teacher. I teach music and art in a very diverse community in Dallas, Texas here. And I love my job, and when I first started, I would hear, the occasional racist comment from a kiddo, and I would shut it down the second it happened, and I was like, I gotta do something about this. And even when I would tell them to do something, or take something away from them, or tell them to stop, they would be like, it's 'cause I'm black, ain't it? And every time I would be like, no, it is not because you are of your race. I'm telling you to do something because you have to do it. I'm telling you to stop doing something because you gotta stop it. It is not because of your race, I promise you. And I eventually found these lessons on respect and love for art. And I taught them these lessons, and we went through and we spoke about who deserves love and respect. What kind of people don't get the love and respect they deserve, and why is that? And race came up both times from kids. And in the time from I taught these lessons probably 2 or 3 years ago, I have yet to hear a racist comment in my classroom since. So, maybe for racial healing to occur, we have to act up. We have to stand up to those who discriminate and call them out. Just maybe, if we open up and talk about the racism that we witness and that we experience, it will go away. Thank you. Just maybe, if enough of us are woke, someday soon we will all be.